How can teens and college students like you help save the elderly living in the rural Midwest from the opioid crisis? Seems like you'd have to be a superhero, but believe it or not, you don't need to be Superman to save a life in your community. Advocacy comes in all different forms, and today we're going to talk about how you can help some of our country's most vulnerable face one of its most pressing issues. But wait, why should anyone care about how the opioid crisis affects older adults in the Midwest? Sure, the opioid crisis is bad, but how bad could it really be? And why older adults? In the Midwest? Well, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, 130 people die from opioid overdose every day. This crisis affects nearly every type of person, but the problem is especially bad among older adults. The opioid mortality rate was highest in the Northeast and Midwest in 2017. And almost 44% of the 4,578 opioid-related deaths in rural areas in 2015 occurred among adults ages 45 and older. These could be moms, dads, grandparents, who were prescribed perfectly legal drugs but fell victim to this crisis because not enough is being done to protect these locations and this age group. So where do you come in? Well, there are different ways that the average person could help decrease the amount of opioid-related deaths among this group. Two important ways you can help are by writing to Congress and educating others in your community. However you choose to advocate, there are some specific problems that you should address or use to persuade those in power. Number 1. Rural areas in the Midwest tend to have limited access to doctors and treatment centers, and this can lead to doctors prescribing more opioids to those with chronic pain. This means more adults are using highly addictive opioids. The worst part is that in these rural communities, first responders are usually not trained to administer life-saving medications for overdose. You can help solve this problem by calling or writing your congressman and demanding that they require doctors to provide alternative treatment to opioids, and that all first responders be trained to administer these life-saving medications. 2. The cost of prevention and treatment has increased while opioids become more available. For example, naloxone is an overdose reversing drug, but according to one article, the price of a bag of heroin today is only $5, while the cost of a dose of naloxone is $150. Similarly, even though medicated assisted treatment can be helpful in fighting addiction, insurance companies can make it harder to get the medication required for this treatment, especially when compared to opioids. The accessibility of treatment options compared to the accessibility of these highly addictive opioids have been working against people with addiction. All of this may sound hopeless, but there are steps that can be taken to limit the number of deaths in these communities. Naloxone may be covered by insurance, such as Medicare and Medicaid plans, and there also may be programs that provide naloxone for those without insurance. You can help by educating your community where these programs are. By spreading the word to caregivers and older adults, you may be able to save someone's life. 3. There has been a continuous rise in opioid-related deaths since this crisis started in the 90s. According to a 2017 Congress hearing, drug overdoses kill more Americans than gun homicides and car crashes combined. And according to a scientific journal on drug abuse, substance abuse treatment needs in rural areas dwarf available services, and overdose rates in rural areas in the Central Plains exceeds 30 deaths per 10,000 residents in some rural counties. These statistics cannot be tolerated. Now that you know them, it's time to stand up. Organize a group and call your congressman. Tell them it's time to do better. It's time to address the problems that elderly adults in these rural areas are facing. So now you know the problem, and you know the stats. It's time to make a change, and it's time to spread awareness. Think about it. This crisis started way back in the 90s when some of the very adults that need our help now were just a bit older than you might be. Let's not let this issue get worse until we're old enough to be equally at risk. Educate, speak up, and don't give up until a change is made.